welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Alex, but you can call me Senpai, and joining me tonight, I just have our Emperor of Explosions, Riker.
That's me.
Yes, that's you. And we're actually together again in your apartment.
Yep.
And we're really close, and we're definitely not, this is not gay.
No.
It's not gay at all.
Not gay at all.
So, this is part 2 of our 2-part JoJo's Bizarre Adventure spectacular, whatever you want to call it. So part 1 dealt with specifically the anime that Natai and I did, and I highly recommend you go check that out if you haven't done so yet.
If you haven't, what are you doing with
I know, right?
your life?
But the second part is just going to be me and Riker talking about the manga itself, the source, the greatness that is Hirohiko Araki's work, his life's work.
He's a vampire, you know.
He doesn't age.
Yeah, Dio is based off of him.
I think that Dio. I think that you see two characters that are just like Araki in his work. You see Dio, who is like what he actually is, and you have Rohan, who is what he does.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why there's another Rohan OVA coming out.
Yeah.
It's because it's literally Araki's life. But just like part 1, spoilers abound in this one. So if you haven't read and or seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, number 1, I think we both highly recommend it.
Yeah.
And number 2, you probably shouldn't be listening to this if you don't want to be spoiled. But I'm going to start off, since you weren't with us for part 1, even though you have seen the anime, I just want to ask you quickly the two questions that I asked Natai at the beginning of ours. What was your first exposure to JoJo's? I'm assuming it was the David Productions anime.
Yes.
From 2012, no, 11, 10, 11.
I think it was 11.
Yeah, 2011 was part 1.
Yeah, I watched it in 2012, I think. I watched it right after it ended.
Okay.
Yeah, because I saw the announcement that they were doing part 3. An anime for it, and I was like, what's this? And then I Googled it, and I got a bunch of memes. And I got the, how many breads have you eaten in your lifetime? And I was like, I have to watch this. This looks incredible. So that's where it all went downhill.
That's what Natai said. He got exposed to it kind of through the anime, but more so through the memes. Getting into that first off.
Yeah.
So if that was your first experience, what was the moment particularly that hooked you into the JoJo's universe? Because for me, it was part 2.
It was part 2. Part 2 is what really hooked me. Well, there's a specific part in the part 1 anime that also hooked me. It's when,
Was it Kono Diodan?
No, it was, the whole stuff with Dio, I thought, like the fight scene in the mansion where the mansion is burning down, I thought was pretty cool. But the part that really hooked me was when he was fighting zombie Jack the Ripper.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, this is so stupid. And I love it. And he comes like flying out of a dead horse.
That's the part where Speedwagon is introduced, isn't it?
Speedwagon's introduced when Jonathan goes looking for the guy that was selling Dio the poison.
Yes.
Yeah, and he throws the bladed hat at him. Like,
that you never see again.
Yeah,
it's
you
only
never
used
see
that
it again.
one time.
Yeah.
And there are times when Speedwagon could have used that hat again, and he doesn't.
He never fights again.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
All right, well, so we'll get into it. We don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the manga for parts 1 through 4 because David Productions did a pretty damn good job adapting the anime for that, but there are a few differences that I think we really want to... Well, there's one big difference that we want to touch on, and that's part 1. It's the only real part that has a big distinction between the anime and the manga, in the sense that there's 2.5 or so chapters in the manga for part 1 that aren't adapted into the anime.
Yeah.
And it's the part where you basically get to watch Jonathan and Edina's relationship kind of grow. It's basically them doing coupleship for 2.5 chapters.
Yeah, it's just like romantic fluff stuff.
Yeah.
It's cute, but...
Yeah, I think the anime certainly benefits from it not being there, because I think if they had added that, it would have really messed up the tone of the anime that they were going for, and definitely the pacing.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that for the manga's sake, it really helps flesh out Edina's character just a little bit more. Whereas in the anime, she's not really much a part of it. It's just to be there as like something on the arm of JoJo.
Well, she's kind of she's an old sassy lady in part 2.
She is. I mean, you see her more in part 2 and then a little bit in part 3 than you do in anywhere else.
Yeah.
Or not part 3. That's
No.
Suzy Q I'm thinking of.
Yeah, you're thinking of Suzy Q.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, she's in part 4.
She is in part 4.
She's very sassy as well.
But that's really the only major difference that David Production put in the anime for that adaptations for part 1 through 4. But something I think we can definitely talk about with the manga for parts 1 through 4 is there was a big art style change, especially later in that, between parts 3 and 4. There was a major art style change, and it's something that Araki has become known for over the years, is constantly switching up art styles, changing character design, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
For, like, parts 1, 2, and definitely 3, you can say that the focus was, like, the typical male shonen beefy
Everybody
characters.
looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah, basically.
Sylvester Stallone in the 80s,
I mean,
you know?
the inspiration was definitely something like Fist of the North Star.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is huge, muscle-bound, just jocks, and they fight each other, and it's like, I have bigger muscles than you, bah.
Yeah.
But then when you get to part 4, there's still a little bit of it in part 4, because, you know, you got Jotaro there as well. But it starts to get more of a Bishi kind of look to it, especially with the male characters. And I don't know if it's necessarily a good or a bad thing. I personally think it's a good thing.
I think I like all the art styles, to be honest. I liked the older looking, you know, Fist of the North Star kind of style because it was very, like, you know, nostalgic. It feels like even the David production anime, you feel like you're watching like
something from the 80s,
like an 80s, you know, power trip kind of anime.
Yeah,
with big buff dudes punching people and their heads exploding when they get punched and stuff. And then, you know, as it gets like his designs get significantly more complicated.
Yeah,
as it goes on,
and especially with not just the actual character designs, but the clothes that they wear.
Yeah,
like they become like these impossible. Like no one would ever wear this. Some people couldn't even wear this.
They're wearing like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, well, that's definitely part 5 with Fugo.
Yeah.
He wears a Swiss cheese suit, basically.
It's just got Swiss cheese holes in it.
I think that it definitely shows Araki's growth as an artist over time when you watch his art style changes. Like, there's a reason that his art is he's the only mangaka that's ever had his art displayed in the Louvre. I mean, there's a reason for it, and you can see how he's like learned and grown over the years when you read JoJo's.
I think he's done like design collabs with like Louis Vuitton or something.
Yeah, he
like
has.
That. Or Gucci or something.
No, it was Gucci because
Gucci?
there was an entire Rohan One Shot manga that was just dedicated to his design work with Gucci.
Yeah. So,
I think it was actually called Rohan Goes to Gucci. But something else in parts 1 through 4, it introduced a lot of iconic characters. Both, I mean, you could say anime and manga characters. Joseph Joestar is just one of the most iconic characters ever. I mean, what can you say about Joseph Joestar that hasn't already been said a million times?
Yeah, he's the perfect shonen protagonist, in my opinion.
He is. He's absolutely in because you're introduced to him in part 2, and he's the grandson of Jonathan from part 1. And you actually get to see him grow as a character from parts 2 to 3, and then you finally see him as an old man in part 4.
Yeah.
And which I think is actually one of the most entertaining versions of Joseph is in part 4.
Spoilers, I guess technically he's the only character that breaks the Joestar family curse, too.
That's true, because every other member of the Joestar family dies at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
Or relatively young age. And I get the sense that Joseph was supposed to be the poster child for JoJo's, but then when part 3 came around, Jotaro kind of took up that role.
Yeah, I think Jotaro is still the poster child.
He is still the only character that's appeared in 4 different parts of JoJo's. He appeared in part 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah. Granted, his appearance in part 5 is basically as a cameo, but he does appear.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that while Joseph Joestar may have originally been supposed to have been the poster child, Jotaro kind of became that.
Yeah.
And he certainly, when you first meet Jotaro, you're kind of introduced to him as like this pompous like child, but then you get to see him grow into like a really cool guy you want to root for.
Yeah.
And then he becomes, by the time part 6 rolls around, you find out he's a really damn good father.
Yeah.
He's actually become, when we first introduced Jotaro, I didn't like him. I didn't really like him in part 3.
I don't think most people like him at the beginning of part 3, but by the end of part 3, I think a lot of people...
I definitely warmed up to him, but I still is like kind of a bit.
Because he lacks the personality that all the other Joestars have had up until that point.
He's got that attitude, yada yada does he?
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically his personality in a nutshell. His
personality is just no.
Yeah, no. Just no.
No.
No nonsense, no fooling around, just no.
Yeah. I just want to beat up this vampire and go home.
But especially by the time by the end of part 4, I kind of warmed up to him, and then when part 6 comes around, it's like, wow, he's a pretty damn good character.
Yeah, no, he definitely, he gets a lot more. I think he's gotten more than any other character in the series, more development.
Yeah. It's really the only things I can think of to say about parts 1 through 4, unless you got anything else. I mean, there's definitely some plot holes we could talk about in parts 3 and 4.
Yeah, some things that he definitely opened up and then never really delved into,
Yeah.
but...
See, there's 2 major ones in part 4. The fact that Josuke seems to have rescued himself, and that was never expanded upon. And then the invisible baby, Shizuka Joestar.
Yeah.
Which, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about those later when we get to our theories about what may be coming up for part 9.
Yeah.
But those are definitely plot holes that people have pointed out over the years. And Araki himself has pointed out that in interviews, he says, so, sometimes this gets so involved, I just forget stuff.
Yeah, I could see him probably forgetting what he set up in part 4,
Yeah.
to be honest, but it'd be cool if he tried to
I
do
honestly
something with
believe that he originally set out for it to be like a time travel sort of thing with
Oh, yeah.
Kira's bites the dust ability.
Yeah.
And he was going to get stuck in the past at the end, and he would have to save himself. That's my opinion on it. But like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
In parts 1 through 4, who's your favorite JoJo and who's your favorite villain?
Joseph still has to be my favorite JoJo, and then Kira, I think, is easily going to take my favorite villain. A lot of people want to say Dio, but Kira is just... I wanted to root for Kira. Like, one of the few villains who's... He's terrible. He's a terrible human being, but, like, every time he's on the screen, I'm like, give me more. I want more. Give me more.
He just wants to live a quiet life, man.
Yeah, he just wants to live a quiet life.
Killing people and taking their hands and probably jerking off with them.
Stealing women's hands and eating sandwiches on them.
Yes.
Duang.
So yeah, exactly. So that is something I do want to talk about before we actually move on to any other of the parts. I think a lot of the reason that JoJo's didn't become really big outside of Japan until relatively recently is because, for the manga at least, I mean, discounting the anime, which came in within the last 5 or 6 years, the manga itself has never had really reliable English scans.
No.
Outside of Japan, like unless you could read Japanese, you really couldn't. JoJo's wasn't accessible to you.
It had good meme.
Yeah, it had good meme
Scanlations.
potentials. But I mean, and there was an anime like Natain I talked about for part 1 that they had the OVAs from the mid '90s, but nobody liked them. Even Araki wants to forget they existed.
Yeah. Well, they were really cheaply done, and
Yeah, I will say if you're looking for just a really cheap entertainment, go watch the English dub of those OVAs. It's fucking terrible.
I've never seen it, but I'm sure it's awful.
It's an enemy stand. It's literally Jotaro is like the most ineffectual voice in that whole thing.
Oh, really?
Like everything is, it's like he's literally reading it right in front of him.
An enemy stand.
But yeah, there was no access to the manga outside of Japan really until relatively recently. And in fact, even the scans that did exist were terribly translated. Like, the most infamous one is obviously the Duang translation for part 4, which for historical context, you should go read it.
Yeah.
Because it's very entertaining.
It was done by a high schooler.
Yeah,
for
it was
project.
an English project, which they failed.
Yeah.
But
But
it's definitely worth it for the entertainment value, I think. Because it has some like, I am the fucking strong.
I am the fucking strong.
And what a beautiful Duang, which has become a huge meme.
Chew.
But yeah, I mean, now we have the JoJonium manga that's coming out through Viz, and they're doing a really good job translating it, I think. And there's also, I highly recommend you check this out if you can, which is technically illegal, but whatever. There's a team in Japan called JoJo's Colored Adventure, and they've been taking basically page by page, chapter by chapter, they've been taking the old JoJo's manga and colorizing every single page, and they do a beautiful job of it.
Oh yeah.
So I definitely recommend checking that out. That's actually how I read parts 4 and 5 was through them, and getting to read part 4 in color was beautiful.
Yeah. I actually didn't do that, but I should go back and do that.
You should. They do a really good job. They're doing great work. Definitely check those guys out if you get a chance. But yeah, I'd have to agree with you when you said that Joseph was your favorite JoJo from parts 1 through. Actually, he's probably my favorite JoJo. Period.
Oh, he's so crazy, and he's awesome in part 3, and he's awesome in part 4. He's awesome in every part he's in.
Yeah,
and he's always like this big goofy character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely got to agree with you about Kira. Just he is crazy, but he's the kind of crazy you want to like say, you can do this.
Yeah.
So should we move on to part 5?
Yeah.
All right. So part 5, Vento Arreo, which is part 5 never at this point. Thank you, David Productions. All we wanted was more Rohan. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Vento Arreo, I think, represents an enormous shift in tone for JoJo's from previous parts.
It's the start of the fall of the main universe.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly much more, not as like happy-go-lucky as part 4. I mean, part 4 had its really serious parts, but you also had moments of just sheer comedic gold, like the Junkin fight with Rohan, which was ridiculously funny.
Also one of the best episodes.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's a huge tonal shift in Vento Arreo where it goes from being kind of like monster of the week to serious, semi-serious to being completely serious almost all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly have like your breather moments, like the big standout for me is the breakdancing with Narancia and Fugo.
Yeah.
When they start to turn on the boombox and start breakdancing. So you have moments like that, but they're few and far between in part 5. It's very violent. It's very brutally violent. And once you get to about halfway through the manga, you really start to feel like everyone is fair game for death.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, and it's the first time where the main JoJo is not necessarily a good guy.
Yeah. He's definitely an anti-hero of sorts, for sure.
Yeah, well, he's like a part of a hit squad for the Mafia. So. And
in fact, he's really, with I guess you could say the exception of Jotaro, he's really the only JoJo you're introduced to where you're kind of not supposed to like him.
No.
Like, he's an asshole when you first meet him. He is a complete and utter asshole. He becomes a really cool guy by the end, and a guy you want to root for, but when you first meet him, in those first few chapters, he's a terrible human being.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's like, he's proud of being Dio's son.
Technically Dio's son.
Oh, technically Dio's son.
It was Jonathan's penis.
Yeah. But.
I think that another thing that because part 5 is my favorite part. I know it's not a lot of people's favorite part, but it's mine. I really I love the violence in it. And I also love the nature where you never knew who was next for the chopping block. And it kept me hooked, and it made me keep reading. I binged through part 5. I got to the point where I just had to keep going, and I had to get to the end.
I think I did that for part 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah. Well, you get to that point, and you're kind of invested in the universe.
Yeah. I was just like, give me more JoJo's.
But there's a lot of... Did your screen go off?
It's just asleep.
Oh, okay. There's a certain part in it where... hold on.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's still recording.
Okay, good. There's a certain part in it that definitely hit me hard, and I think you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a big shonen guy. I'm not really into a whole lot of shonens. And also classifying JoJo's as a shonen kind of does it a disservice, in my opinion. But I have to give it credit. It was one of the few shonens that actually made me cry at a character's death. Like, there's other shonens that have really sad deaths in it. I can point to a few in Naruto that are standouts, which I won't spoil here. But I do want to say Narancia's death in part 5 killed me.
Yeah.
And you knew it was happening.
I knew it was gonna come.
Because when you were telling me to read the manga, and I told you I was at part 5, you were really quiet, because there were times when I would say, okay, I'm at part, it's like, all right, you need to definitely pay attention to this, and this. And then I got to part 5, and you were just quiet.
I think I got you into reading the manga by sending you fan art of Narancia. I think that was one of the ways that I was like, look at this guy.
Yeah, and then I got to part 5, and you're like, I got him now.
Yeah.
But yeah, his death, I don't know, man. Like, he's kind of introduced as lovable loser.
Oh yeah.
And then you absolutely fall in love with him. He's so stupid.
He's so stupid. He's like he's the the comedic sidekick kind of.
Yeah. And he wants to be so much smarter than he is.
Oh yeah. But you love him. He loves pizza. He's like relatable.
He and I had the same favorite pizza, margarita pizza.
Yeah. He's also got a really cute character design. I won't lie. He's a cute dude.
Yes, he is.
So
he's definitely a trap.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
For JoJo's standards, yeah, he's definitely a trap.
But that fight that he dies in is like, it's a particularly brutal fight.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But then like with almost no ceremony whatsoever, he's just dead. Like there's no real chance to mourn him. There's no chance to think, oh my god, what's going on? Because right after that fight, you go directly into another fight.
Yeah.
But one of the things that really stuck out, and it's actually one of the manga panels that it's probably one of my favorite manga panels ever, is the very end of that chapter where he dies. You actually see it. It's after Giorno goes over and just like stands over him, and then you just watch Giorno walk away, and it focuses on Narancia, and it's just him surrounded by flowers.
Yeah.
And it's what Giorno did when he leaned down there. He touched it with Gold Experience, and his flowers grew out of the pavement.
Yeah.
So that whole scene, like, I can't wait for something like that to be animated. I want to see what David Productions can do with that. Fucking do it!
I know. Jesus.
It's
been, what, a year and a half?
It's been 470 some days as at the time of this recording.
Oh my god.
Since the end of part 4. There's actually, for those that don't know, there is a Tumblr out there where someone has been counting day by day the days since the end of part 4.
Yeah.
It's called isventoareoconfirmed.tumblr.com. Still not. But there's a couple other things I want to talk about in part 5. And you mentioned this before we started. It's the part where the stands themselves and the stand battles start getting absolutely insane.
Yeah, you don't know what the hell's going on.
No, and especially with the main villain's stand, King Crimson. Like, how does it even work? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Araki doesn't even know.
No, he's been asked, and he says, I don't know.
I feel like when he was writing King Crimson, he was like, oh shit, he's about to lose. King Crimson can do this. And you're
this,
like,
and this, and this.
Yeah, and you're like, but how does that work? And he's like, don't worry about it. That's what he did. Like, it's a really cool stand.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus Christ, is it confusing at times. And even, like, there are times where I had to, like, reread pages because I was like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. It's something that would be very interesting to see animated because I don't think you can animate it.
Yeah, well, we'll try. I hope.
There's 2 other things I want to talk about. First of all, what do you think personally of the cast of Vento Reo? Because I think it's one of the most well-rounded casts out of all the parts.
Yeah,
in terms of their abilities and their character personalities.
I love the whole gang in part 5. They're all, misfits and like, I mean, that's kind of part 4 as well.
Yeah. But part 4 is built around a community in a town.
Yeah.
Whereas part 5 is like a bunch of disparate people coming together.
Yeah. And they're all kind of like, even with how serious part 5 is, like, the interactions between each other in that part are pretty goofy and lighthearted at times, and you get really attached to them really quickly.
There's a lot of good one-liners in part 5.
Oh, yeah.
Especially between Giorno and Bucalati, and between Fugo and Narancia.
Also, that's what I always think about is Fugo and Narancia.
Fugo X Narancia is the only OTP I have for JoJo's. Just, it's so pretty.
Yeah.
And they're together a lot, so yeah.
Yeah.
I love that scene where Fugo tries to teach Narancia how to do basic math and he can't do it.
Yeah.
And it was one other thing I wanted to ask you. What do you think, by the end, what did you think of Giorno as a JoJo, as a main JoJo?
I liked him. He's far from my least favorite. So I think he's, there's 8 JoJos now, so I would
technically 9.
Oh, well,
but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Probably be 4.
That's fair enough. That seems to be about where people rank him usually, in the mid range. And also, before we move on, what did you think of Polnareff returning for part 5? Because I thought
I love Polnareff.
that scene where he's introduced is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I was so happy when he showed back
where
up.
he walks around the corner and he's holding the arrow.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, it's about to go down.
He's still a lovable loser.
He is.
So.
And you get to see him like as an old man in a wheelchair.
Yeah. So.
I thought that was an interesting choice to bring him back.
Polnareff?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel like by the end of part 3, I mean, he's like the only one that survives, except for
Jotaro,
and
Joseph,
and
Iggy and Avdol and Kakuin. They all end up dead.
Yeah, so
that was sad, by the way.
Yeah, that was very sad because they all die in like a very short.
Within like 5 chapters of each other, they're all dead.
Yeah, he kills like the whole fucking crew. But
and Iggy just dies like that.
Well, same with Polnareff, or not Polnareff.
Avdol.
Avdol's like, watch out, and then his arm's just on the ground and he's gone. Vanilla Ice, Jesus, and Polnareff is awesome. Like I loved him in part 3, like from the very beginning, because he was just so stupid, and he was always getting his ass kicked, and people were always sneaking up on him, and he's always getting like stabbed, and I always felt bad for him, but. He's always, he's always entertaining whenever he's on the.
I love the fact that they brought him back and you got to see Silver Chariot again, especially the Requiem, Silver Chariot Requiem, and also part 5 was really the part that introduced Requiem stands as a thing. Although technically, you could say that Killer Queen from part 4 is a Requiem stand because he got pierced with the arrow twice.
Yeah.
But that was the first time you actually got to see a Requiem stand and got an explanation as to what it was. So we move on to part 6.
Yeah.
So part 6, Stone Ocean. First of all, it's the first and so far only part of JoJo's that has a female JoJo as a main character. Jolene. I think a lot of people basically like Jolene as a character, but there's a lot of fan division on this particular part of JoJo's, and I think that has more to do with the actual writing than the characters themselves.
Yeah. Stone Ocean is weird. First of all, the villain is certainly different.
Yeah. Openly gay Catholic priest.
Poochie. I think it's technically the first part that takes place in America.
Well, the first part of part 2 is in New York City.
That's right.
Although most of it takes place in other locations, Mexico, and then I think there's a little bit that takes place back in the UK, I think,
wherever that Coliseum is where they're fighting, all that stuff. But
there's a scene that takes place in Italy as well when he meets Caesar.
Caesar. And but I mean, it takes place entirely in America and Florida.
Yeah.
Near us.
Yeah, very near where you and I live.
Yeah, which is always really cool. You don't typically see that locale in manga or anime.
Yeah, and it's kind of, they portray it kind of well,
yeah.
I think. It takes place mostly in Port St. Lucie, Florida, which is to the southeast of where you and I live. We live near Tampa.
Yeah.
And then it also, there's a part that takes place in Cape Canaveral, which is where Kennedy Space Center is.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of fan division on. You either love it or you hate it. I personally I liked it all the way up until the end. I think that's a lot of people's basic problem with it.
I still like Jolene a lot, and I like what they did with Jotaro.
Yeah.
Up until the end.
Yeah.
But
spoiler: Jotaro dies at the end.
Yeah, he gets his head cut off.
Which is unconscious for most of it as well.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he died. It's a pretty badass death.
Yeah,
he saves Jolene.
He goes down swinging for sure.
Yeah, but it was pretty hard to watch. The strongest stand user we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Get his shit rocked.
Bite the dust.
Yeah. Oh man, the stands in that part I feel like were too strong.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, it just got ridiculous towards the end. Like,
yeah, I think you and I were talking beforehand, and I think that even Araki realized by the end that he needed to do something kind of really different, and I think that's why he ended the way he did, with basically resetting the entire universe. There's definitely some standout moments, though, I think, in Part 6. Definitely, like you said, the final fight with Jotaro kind of ending up dying. The White Snake fight I thought was pretty good when Poochie was first introduced.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool fights. Poochie's an actually like a really interesting villain. He's not my favorite because he doesn't have the charisma of a lot of he has charisma, but he's so serious, and like Dio's like ridiculous, and Kira's ridiculous. And King Crimson, you're just like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. But with Poochie, he takes himself very seriously all the time. And, they give him a really deep backstory with connection to Dio. And
Dio actually technically appears in Part 6 as a flashback.
Yeah. It's funny that the parts of Part 3 is really what ends up leading into the events of Part 6.
Yeah. It definitely is a springboard for what happens in Part 6.
Yeah.
I often wonder if that was the plan all along for Araki, but I highly doubt that. He flies by the seat of his pants a lot, I think.
Yeah, I feel like he finished Part 5 and was like, where do I go from here? Why don't we bring back Jotaro and Dio in some way?
And then not even go into any kind of details to how Jotaro had a kid.
Yeah. Well, he's divorced.
And
so.
you'd think if he knew this going into it, he would have mentioned Jolene in Part 5 or 4, because Jolene would have been born by that time.
That's true. He would have been married by that time as well.
Yeah. It's also pointed out that he is divorced in Part 6, so something went wrong, obviously.
Yeah. It's probably his obsession with,
Dio?
tracking down bad stand users and,
It's also never really explained as to whether her Jolene's mother was a stand user.
No, it's not. I'm going to assume she wasn't, since it's never mentioned.
Yeah. There's almost nothing we know about Jolene's mother except for the fact that she was an American of Italian heritage. That's all we know.
Yeah. So, she might have been blonde.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Jolene has green hair?
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is dyed, but who knows? Maybe with the power of stands you can change your hair color.
Oh, maybe.
I have often wondered that with JoJo's. Can they use their stands for practical purposes besides just fighting?
Well, the doctor in Part 4 used it to transplant people's faces and stuff.
That's true. And Tonio, the chef, used it to make food.
Yeah.
Pearl Jam,
yeah, that's right.
I love that stand. I'm going to fix that spaghetti. I love that scene. I definitely think that there's a lot of good characters in Stone Ocean.
Oh, yeah.
You have...
most of them don't live.
Yeah. You have Emporio, which I thought was an interesting choice to have a child character. And, what is essentially a part that's based in and around a prison. Again, you have Poochie, who ends up being the prison chaplain. I love Poochie's design, though. I think his design is probably my favorite villain design in JoJo's.
Yeah, his sideburns get more and more ridiculous.
And it's almost as if the more power he accumulates as a stand user, the more ridiculous his facial hair gets.
Yeah, his eyebrows.
You almost expect it to start glowing by the end.
Yeah, his eyebrows are connecting to his sideburns, which are connecting to his
his stuff on his chin.
Yeah.
I loved his. It's just so ridiculous. He's very purple. He wears a lot of purple.
He does wear a lot of purple. He wears a purple priest.
Almost reminiscent of Prince's outfits that he used to wear on stage.
Yeah, very reminiscent of Prince in general. His whole design.
I just think there's not a whole lot you can say about Stone Ocean except that it kind of toward the end has what I would consider to be pretty lazy writing. Yeah. And I think that's because Araki realized that he was kind of out of ideas for this universe.
Yeah, I think so. I think the power creep had gotten too ridiculous to the point where, he had to do something because there was no way he was going to be able to one-up the abilities in Part 6.
Yeah.
If he kept it in the same universe.
Yeah. I do kind of wish, because as we said, the universe does reset at part 6. I do kind of wish that the next part had kind of gone on from that point, because the universe isn't destroyed, it's just reset. Because there's something I would have liked to have seen, but again, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I want to move on to part 7, which is your favorite part by far.
Yes.
You love part 7.
I love part 7.
You should definitely talk about it.
So part 7 is Steel Ball Run. It's Araki's introduction part into the new universe, and we're taken back to Jonathan Joestar, but this time he goes by Johnny, and he's crippled.
And he's an American.
He's very American. He's got, a star
and a horseshoe.
Star and a horseshoe bandana. And it's essentially, Steel Ball Run is like the story of Hidalgo, but with stands, which is that epic horse race.
Or as the title would suggest, the Cannonball Run.
Yeah, or by the Cannonball Run. I always think of Hidalgo because
that was on horses.
Yeah, I think of the horses a lot, but because Johnny's horse is almost like a part of his character. Like his horse is always there. Even in the video games, he's on a horse.
Well, you can say that the horses in Steel Ball Run are essentially characters in and of themselves. They're extensions of the personality of the people who ride them.
Yeah. And Johnny has like my favorite sidekick character, which is Gyro Zeppeli. So the Zeppelis finally come back, and Gyro is excellent. He's got
gold teeth.
He's got gold teeth that say Gyro, and he's awesome.
Yeah.
Full
of one-liners.
He's the king of one-liners.
Yeah.
He's just excellent. There's so many
tell them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah. There's so many excellent scenes that are just absolutely hilarious. And the main villain is the President of the United States.
Yeah, Funny Valentine.
Though he's not really a villain. There's not really... he's definitely the antagonist, but I feel like he doesn't have, some evil master plan.
Yeah.
He just wants to be, exclusionist.
He definitely has one of the most interesting stands in JoJo's. D4C.
Yeah.
Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
And the fact that he's just so flashy with everything that he does, I think definitely makes him stand out as a villain, or antagonist, if you will.
Yeah. He's Donald Trump.
He basically, yeah. He basically is. He's a meme. He's Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's a lot like Donald Trump.
Dude, were you personally surprised that he started a whole new universe with Part 7? That Araki started a whole new universe?
Not
or did you
really
think this was a logical progression?
With the way Part 6 ended, I was kind of expecting.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
I definitely think it was a great way to introduce the new universe.
Yeah.
And to go back to kind of the roots of JoJo's with the characters. Like you have Jonathan and Johnny. You have Dio and Diego.
Yeah.
You have the Zeppelis with Gyro. But then you have a mix of the old with the new, and I think that's why it works so well.
Oh yeah.
Basically, Araki took what worked from the beginning and he added new stuff to make it fresh.
Yeah, he took Part 1 and he threw stands in it and placed it in America, and threw a new
and turned it into basically like a road trip / race.
Yeah, and it's super fun the whole way through. It's got a lot of comedy. It's also got probably the most emotional death for me in it with Gyro.
Yeah.
Even Johnny's death, because Johnny does
die.
Just like Jonathan, kind of starts that Joestar curse again. And his death is really pretty awful. He doesn't die in a great way.
No. Kind of very undignified almost.
Oh yeah, he's crawling on the ground and a giant rock falls on him. But it's just
it's hard.
Yeah, the whole part's fantastic. The fights with Diego are really cool. Diego's a really smart character. Mm-hmm. He's not nearly as evil as Dio.
No.
But Johnny's stand is really cool as well.
Yeah.
So, and how his stand can even hurt him if he, doesn't use it right. So.
And then I will say that Part 7 has one of the most bullshit stands in the entire franchise. Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, his only power is to encourage his stand user. That's it. That's his whole power.
He's a party buff.
Party.
Yeah, he's the support.
You can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
I said I'm done. You want to fight for me? No, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I thought that the Steel Ball run for me, as I said, was a great introduction to a new universe. But I also found it very interesting that it's so far the only real JoJo's part that delves into religious topics. Like, Jesus is an actual character that appears in Part 7.
Yeah.
And you can make the argument that Johnny kind of turns into a new Jesus. He kind of becomes like this demigod figure.
Yeah.
At the end of Part 7. I thought that was really interesting because prior to this, there really wasn't any religious symbology or imagery in JoJo's at all. So I thought that was kind of interesting for Araki to include that.
Yeah, well, it actually played into a lot of topics that are going on now.
Yeah.
With, funny Valentine doesn't want people coming in.
Mm-hmm.
He wants the country to be pure, and, there's some racist undertones going on.
Yeah.
He doesn't like immigrants coming into the country, so he's trying to wall it off. It plays into modern politics quite a bit.
Which is amazing considering it was written way before any of this started happening.
Yeah. It's just a really interesting part. I think it's a lot of people's favorite parts.
Yeah, I would say especially outside of Japan for sure.
Yeah.
Of all the JoJo's fans I've talked to at like conventions and whatever, it seems to be by and large people's favorite part outside of Japan, especially in North America.
It's just really well done, like all the way through.
Also, a big art style change with Part 7, but from Part 6.
I would actually say his designs got less ridiculous from Part 5 and 6 to Part 7.
Yeah, I would say with the single exception of Zeppeli, maybe.
Yeah,
because he looks kind of ridiculous.
Zeppeli's ridiculous because he's got the gold teeth and everything, but
and he's got those like metal sideburns on his cheeks.
He's got those sideburns, but like the outfits aren't nearly as ridiculous.
Oh no, yeah.
As Part 5 and
actually,
6.
I would say of the later parts of JoJo's in terms of like the clothing design, it has some of the most practical looking clothes that the characters wear.
Yeah, Part 8's not nearly as...
No.
Yeah, Part 8's pretty standard
Yeah.
clothing. I kind of like that because I feel like a lot of the outfits in Part 6 and 5, I was just like, what is that? That's not... Nobody... You can't even wear that,
Yeah. Well, especially Fugo's, Swiss cheese outfit.
Yeah, Fugo's Swiss cheese outfit probably takes the cake. It's like, why, man? You're not even wearing a shirt.
No, it's basically underwear with Swiss cheese on top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked it.
Naranci's outfit is really nice. I like Naranci's outfit.
I like the guy that's in that outfit.
Yeah. But, like, even Giorno's outfit is, like, a little ridiculous, so.
Yeah, well, the ladybugs and the, yeah.
It's
meant to emulate that outfit that Prince wore during a concert, I think in 94 or 5. His shirt off. But,
yeah. Those ladybugs are in the final OP of Part 4.
They are. There's a lot of things that point to Part 5 in the final OP of Part 4. Fucking David production. You fucking teases. But yeah, Steel Ball Run is definitely... I think if you were only going to check out a single part of the manga, I would point to Steel Ball Run.
Yeah, I feel like it's the most, contained.
Yeah, either that or Part 4, maybe.
Yeah, Part 4 you could definitely do because I feel like even though Jotaro and Joseph are in it, they're not like... You don't necessarily need to know what they've been through because they kind of like...
It's kind of explained to you.
Yeah.
I think that, those are definitely the two. But Steel Ball Run, I think if I were going to point to any one particular part and say this is what kind of JoJo's is, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. It's so unique in terms of just, like, I can't think of another manga that's anywhere like that. Like, takes place in America, follows a horse race, adventure, road trip.
No, I can't think.
Some bros trying to get a magical item that grants wishes and stuff.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Yeah.
There's so few things that even take place in America. Like, consistently in America.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's JoJo's in general. Now that I think about it, all the parts I can't really think of relate to a specific anime
Yeah.
manga. But
I mean, you can say that JoJo's is kind of international in the sense that it's basically had a part or parts that have taken place in almost all parts of the globe, except for maybe Australia at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had parts that take place in Asia, America, Europe with the UK and Italy, Africa with Part 3.
Part 3 takes place in Africa.
You could say that there's parts of Part 2 that take place in Mexico and somewhat in South America.
Yeah.
So pretty much Australia is the only unknown region of JoJo's so far. Australian JoJo for Part 9 confirmed.
Get some kangaroos with stands.
Jesus.
There's got to be a kangaroo with a stand.
Somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we know that
his name is Tom.
Yeah, exactly. We miss you, Tom. I mean, we've already seen that there are animals that can use stands in Part 3.
Yeah. And in Part 4, there's the mount or that rat.
The rat whose stand is called Rat.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to the final part. Well, not so far the final part of JoJo's. It's still in print and coming out kind of monthly. And basically, whenever Araki gets around to doing another chapter.
Yeah, I mean, he's so famous right now. He doesn't, he can take his time and put out what he wants.
Absolutely, he can work on his own schedule,
which is nice.
But that's Part 8, which is JoJolion, which is currently in production right now. There's not a whole lot I really think I can say about it because we don't really know where the story is going just yet.
No.
I think it's definitely the part that, for me personally, and I think for you too, it's definitely the part that's taking the most to click with us.
Yeah,
I'm not sold on it yet.
It's been going on for so long, and the chapters, because, JoJo's is now monthly, so the chapters are 30, 40 pages.
Yeah, as opposed to 15 or so pages that they used to be.
And it's just got, really long chapters, and it's been going on for so long now, and we still haven't gotten, who the main villain is.
Yeah.
What the purpose of this arc is.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's dragging on a little bit. I want to see it, get moving a little bit, but once JoJo's does get moving, it doesn't typically stop until the arc ends. So maybe that's just me, because this is the only arc I've read that as it's coming out.
Yeah, me too.
So maybe that's why it's taking a while to click with me.
Perhaps because you're not able to binge it like you did with the other chapters or the other parts. I definitely we don't know who the villain is yet, and this has been going on since 2011. So we're coming up on a decade here that this thing has been going on. It's the longest part by far now. It's longer than Steel Ball Run. It's longer than any other part. There's 105, 110 chapters?
Yeah, 104 volumes or something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about of JoJolion. I think 105 chapters right now.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Or around 105 chapters. We should have gotten a main villain reveal by now.
Yeah, it's just... And there's more, it follows the same structure of Part 7 in that it uses the old and refurbishes it for this new universe with Josuke and Kira. Yeah.
And it takes place in Morio for Part 4. It takes place in
Morio. For it being in Morio, I wish I was getting more out of it.
Yeah. You're definitely getting to see more of the city than you got to see in Part 4.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is true. Nice.
Yeah.
I think that some of the characters and the arcs that they brought back to kind of redo, it's been done really well. Just a few chapters ago, they redid the Highway Star arc.
Yeah.
And I thought that was done really, really well. I actually think it was done better than it was done in Part 4.
I don't know. The one in Part 4 is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. When he punches the motorcycle.
Yeah.
But I liked Kira's reintroduction in Part 8. I really wish that they'd kept him around, quote unquote, for longer than they did.
Yeah.
Because I would have liked to have seen Kira kind of being portrayed as a good guy for a lot longer.
Yeah, because he's like the best friend of Josuke.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's also worth pointing out that this technically isn't the Josuke from Part 4.
No.
He has 4 balls, which is something they love to point out a lot.
Yeah. Well, because of the incident with Kira and...
Yeah. Which is a whole... That was pretty convoluted in and of itself.
Yeah.
I'm really hoping that we get some kind of explanation about the wall eyes at some point. What their whole purpose is. and why they appeared after the giant earthquake.
I think I'm trying to think. I think this is the first part where like the sidekick character for JoJo is a girl.
Yeah, well, it's his girlfriend basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think I mean there have been other like JoJo sidekick characters that were girls, but this is definitely the main sidekick character.
Yeah.
I mean,
She's
you had
the one that gets the second, most amount of screen time.
Like in part 4, you could say you had Yukako was technically a companion. You had in part 5 Trish, and you had a female JoJo in part 6. I can't really think of the only real female character that stands out in part 3 is Mariah, but she was a villain.
Yeah.
I love that fight, by the way.
Got some good boobs though.
She got some good boobs, but you got to see Abdul and Joseph pretend to fuck each other.
Yeah. Part 3 is wonderful.
I don't know. I'm really interested to see where part 8 ends up going. I feel like it's been going on so long that Araki is actually trying to set up something really, really good for the end.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads us into the last thing I really want to talk about. I personally think that part 8 is going to lead us into part 9. It's going to be like a direct lead-in.
Oh, yeah. I
think that's what's going to happen. It's kind of at this point what I hope happens. But I think you and I have a couple of theories about part 9. I think it's going to be the final part, first off.
Yeah, I think most people think it's going to be the final part. Araki's getting older now. And
not that you'd know by looking at him.
No.
But it would definitely organize it into 3 distinct trilogies. Parts 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and then 7 through 9. I think that, like you said, he's getting up there in age, but I also think that I think he's just running out of ideas for stories. And stands.
I don't know. Well, he is starting to reuse stands. But I don't know if he's running. I mean, because the stories in part 8 haven't really been bad. I feel like he definitely has taken some stories from part 4 and redone them. I think probably in the way that he originally wanted to do them.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say the writing in part 8 is bad. So I don't know if I think he's just getting tired.
Yeah.
I mean, how long he's been working on this?
30 years? More than 30 years now.
So I'm sure. And who knows? I mean, how long? This is part 8's been going on 8 years now. How long is part 9 gonna be?
Yeah,
that's gonna be another 10 years. He's gonna be like in his upper 60s.
Yeah, almost 70 years old, still doing manga. Of course, it wouldn't be unheard of for people to keep doing that at that age.
Yeah.
But you and I have this theory that I think we kind of agree with, that the most logical thing to do at this point would be for him to merge the 2 universes for part 9. To have characters from both universes interact with each other.
Yeah, I think that's what people want the most.
Yeah.
That's what he wrote in the video games.
Yeah.
And there's, God Dio or whatever.
Dinosaur Dio.
Dinosaur Dio.
Dinosaur Dio.
But it's, I feel like he's definitely building towards something. And I'm hoping that the end of JoJo Leon ends up, kind of with an explosion of the 2 universes, just kind of,
I think it would be a great way for him to go back and fix that plot hole with Josuke in part 4. I honestly do.
Yeah.
It would be really cool to see both Josuke's meet each other. I think that would be a really cool thing to start part 9 with.
Yeah, Josuke meeting Josuke.
Yeah.
I think original Josuke would be pretty mad that Josuke doesn't have his hair.
Yeah, and wears a sailor outfit.
Yeah, pretty small sailor outfit, by the way.
I think at this point that would be the best idea. I think, like you say, it's what most people want. I can tell you who I would like to see be the main character of part 9, and that's the invisible baby from part 4, Shizuka Joestar.
Shizuka. I have a feeling it would be Jotaro if it would be anyone.
It would be so cool, though, because... especially because the way I really wanted it to be with at the end of part 6 with part 7, I was assuming it was going to go to maybe 4 or 5 or 6 more years in the future and have an 18 or 19-year-old Shizuka Joestar and have her probably be the most troubled JoJo, where she'd have to grow up basically without parents, because at the time when Joseph adopted her, he was old as fuck and probably about to die anyway. So it'd been really interesting to see if she was like a troubled teenager and trying to wrestle with her stand powers.
Yeah, how old was Joseph? Joseph was born
78.
78.
I think
Well,
at the time
the Joestars do tend to live a little bit longer because of they have inherent.
Now, Joseph is never mentioned in part 6, but I think it's kind of assumed that he's dead at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume so.
Yeah.
He would be like.
He's
like 100 years old.
Yeah, he'd be like in his 90s or something.
Yeah.
At that point. I'd love to see Shizuka Joestar come back just as a character, just to see her get developed, because I think that's something that Araki probably could do pretty well. I think it's something he may have wanted to do with future parts at the time, but kind of forgot about it. And also, I think that doing 2 back-to-back parts with female JoJo's probably wouldn't have been a great idea.
Yeah. I think probably people would have assumed that. Maybe, now he's just doing female heroines. But
turn into a magical girl show.
I could see, I would like him to do another part with a female.
Yeah. That'd be a great way to end, I think. Do gender-bent JoJo characters for part 9.
Yeah.
Have a gender-bent Jotaro.
Yeah, I mean, he could go, from JoJo Leon, he could do gender-bent Giorno. But Giorno wouldn't have been born, though, because Dio's not around.
That's true.
So, and Diego wasn't a vampire.
Yeah. You have any other thoughts, or what do you want out of part 9? How do you want the series to conclude? How do you conclude a series like this?
I just want it to be, ridiculous, hilarious, also make me cry a little bit. Just, I want him to go all out. I want him to throw all the ideas out there. Everything ridiculous in that dude's head. Just throw it at me. I want it all. Just don't hold anything back. If it's going to be the last part, I want it to be the most ridiculous part. In a good way.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a mess, but...
I definitely want it to not end with like a whimper. I want it to end with a bang.
Yeah.
Like JoJo's should.
I want it to be like, now this is JoJo's. I don't know what just happened.
But it's JoJo's.
Was awesome. And it's JoJo's. And I want
now, for all of our criticisms that we have of Part 8 so far, we can't say it's not JoJo's.
No,
it looks and it feels like JoJo's.
Yeah, it's definitely JoJo's. It's definitely one of the better manga out there running right now.
I mean, even for all of its faults, it's still better than 90% of all manga that's out there now.
Oh, yeah.
I would say even 99% of all manga.
Me, being a little less interested in a JoJo part is still me being greatly more interested in it than compared to, any other manga. So...
All right. Well, there's only one other thing I definitely wanted. I didn't write this down, but I do want to talk about it. So, besides the main manga, there's also some side manga that Araki has done. The 2 really big ones, really the only ones at this point, are the Rohan One Shots that he did, which I think there's 6 of them, or is it 7?
I haven't actually read them.
Really? Mm-hmm. I did. Now, it's worth pointing out that although these focus on Rohan, who was introduced in Part 4, and that part was done in the mid-90s, these one-shots were done in and around the year 2010-2011. So his art style had changed significantly by that time. So Rohan doesn't really look as the same way he did in Part 4.
No.
And it's definitely illustrated very well in the David Productions
the
OVAs that they're doing for the Rohan OVAs. Which Rohan do you prefer?
I think I prefer Part 4 Rohan. I don't know. The David Production OVAs didn't really do that style very much justice.
No. And I think it's partially because they went straight from Part 4 into this.
Yeah.
I think if you'd waited until maybe animating Part 6 or 7 and then doing those OVAs, you probably could have eased people into it more. Because the art style would have been kind of similar by then.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they decided to do these OVAs.
Araki loves Rohan.
Yeah.
It's one of his favorite characters. He said in interviews.
One of his favorite characters is also
Shigechi from Part 4.
Shigechi.
He said it's the death that he regrets the most.
Yeah, he said he likes Shigechi more than he likes Dio.
Yeah. Which just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
It's a somewhat inconsequential character that just gets unsummarily killed off. It's my favorite character, guys.
Yeah, he's got a weird connection to him.
Yeah.
I
personally recommend the Rohan one-shot manga just for the fact that one of them is about Gucci. and it's all about fashion.
Yeah.
That's one thing you can say about Rohan. He's definitely fashionable.
He's definitely fashionable.
Definitely
Drives
the best looking man in part 4.
Oh yeah.
And then the other one shot that was done, which of all the one shots, I was kind of hoping this would get an OVA over the Rohan one shots, and that's Dead Man's Questions, which is the Akira
that's the one
one
I've read.
shot. The art style in that is spectacular. It doesn't look like any other part of JoJo's in terms of like character design wise. I mean, Kira still looks like Kira, but like the clothes that everyone wears are just unbelievably audacious and like very flashy. But it takes place in Kira's afterlife, basically after part 4, and he's essentially like this angel of death that goes around shepherding people into the afterlife. And it's fun to watch because it's Kira still being Kira, but knowing he has to do these things he doesn't want to do.
Yeah. I love that one shot. I really, really, really wish it would get an OVA adaptation. I don't know.
It kind of made me want a whole part of JoJo's just exploring that whole concept.
Yeah.
Even if it isn't with Kira, just exploring that concept of the afterlife in JoJo's.
Yeah, Kira was an interesting character also because I think he's the only character that his ability, like one of its main effects was that it affected you in the afterlife just as much as it affected you in the real world. Like when Killer Queen blew you up, you were blown up in the afterlife. You were pieces.
Yeah.
So
you basically didn't have an afterlife.
Yeah. She gets you just floating through the air in little pieces. So
yeah. I would definitely love at some point that to be made into an OVA. But who knows what David Productions is going to do at this point. Definitely go read it if you haven't. It's worth the read just for the art style alone, I would say. And in fact, there's an art book called JoJo Valera, which I have. I bought at Anime Expo actually last year. I showed it to you.
Yeah.
There's a whole section of that just dedicated to art from Dead Man's Questions. In fact, one of the illustrations from that set ended up in the Louvre. So, and it's that piece where Kira's wearing like the top hat looking thing.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the ones that ended. It's got like sparkles and stars and shit all over it. It's really great. But yeah. And then the last thing is there's 3 light novels that have been based in the JoJo's, officially licensed light novels that have been based in the JoJo's universe. One of them is written by Nisio Isin, the creator of the Monogatari series.
I have not read those.
The only one I've read is the George Joestar light novel. And that is actually, it's insane and you don't know what's going on, but it's pretty cool. And it's basically, it revolves around the life of Jonathan Joestar's son, which is Joseph Joestar's father, George Joestar.
Yeah, when he's fighting in
World War One. Yeah, it takes place around the end and then the aftermath of World War One, where he settles on the Canary Islands and the locals start calling him Jorge Joestar.
He gets eaten by a zombie. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, he does get eaten by a zombie. But that's the only one that I've read. I know that there are 2 others out there, one of which is written by Nisio Isin. I can only imagine how good that is. Could you imagine if Nisio Isin and Araki wrote a part of JoJo's together?
It would be really weird and probably hard to understand.
And then have the anime for it to be a co-production between David Productions and Shaft.
I'm surprised Shaft didn't try to get JoJo. I feel like...
Do you think if David Productions decides to kind of abandon JoJo's, do you think Shaft or some other studio might pick it up?
I don't know about that. I don't know if David Production would ever get rid of it. Even if they weren't even if they're not animating it, they would hold on to it.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a property that makes a ton of money still, even after all these years. It's hard to. It's like Disney giving up any of their properties, and they're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
Even if they're not doing anything with it now, they're just not going to give it up. Well, that leads me to my final question. What do you personally think the legacy of JoJo's is going to be in the future? Like, it's been around for 30 years. 30 years from now, what do you think people are... Is it still going to be as important and relevant as it is today?
Oh, yeah. I think it always will be, because it established all the quote-unquote tropes that are in shonen to this day.
Oh, and even not just shonen, in anime and manga in general. I mean, JoJo's had the first yandere with Yukako.
Yeah.
And that's not a shonen trope. That's just an anime trope at this point.
Yeah. It's a character archetype. Yeah. It's a staple of anime at this point. JoJo's has established a lot of stuff, and it's been, referenced and video games. I mean, the reason why is that a fucking JoJo reference is such a big meme is because
they're everywhere.
They're everywhere, and they usually are JoJo references.
Yeah, and they're starting to creep into Western franchises and media too, which is insane to me.
Oh yeah.
It'd be interesting to see. Do you think Hollywood would ever get a hold of JoJo's? At this point, I kind of hope not.
I mean, I think they could probably do a decent part 1 and part 2 adaptation.
Yeah.
I feel like Stans would be really hard to animate in live action.
Yeah.
I mean,
CG.
we saw it in the part 4 movie.
Yeah. They were okay, but they weren't
okay.
great.
No, it's always gonna look.
There
funky.
were some stands that were better than others. Like the Aqua necklace, the way that looked, I thought was pretty good with the fake water.
Yeah.
But Crazy Diamond was.
Yeah. It's always gonna look.
I don't know. I just don't think that JoJo's could work that well in live action, especially the later parts.
Yeah, I think the first 2 parts probably could. Maybe Steel Ball Run.
Maybe.
But
you don't really have to animate stands in parts 1 and 2.
No, you just have to animate
the Hamon
and vampires.
Yeah, which is pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
I personally think that the legacy of JoJo's is it's going to live on. I think it's one of the most, if not the most important manga ever created.
I think it's definitely one of them. Yeah.
I
think
it's definitely up there with
shonen manga.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely up there with like the works of Miyazaki and Shinkai. I think it's definitely like in that tier. Stuff that's it's respected not only in Japan and in the anime manga community, it's like even outside of it, because you see like all these Hollywood types and celebrities now that are talking about this stuff. So some of it is JoJo's. So hell, there's a lot of athletes that come out and talk about JoJo's shit. It's amazing to me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that when you look back even 50 years from now, it's going to be the thing that's like, this is what got so many people.
There'll probably be a new adaptation of it 50 years from now.
True, a new anime adaptation, or hell, who knows? Another manga could come along and say, I'm going to continue this story.
I don't know if I'd be okay with that, but yeah, I think
Araki does have children, you know.
No, yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean that they're going to be as good of an artist as him.
That's true.
Or as creative as him. But I do think I think it's going to be an anime a series that never dies.
Yeah.
In a sense that
it's always in the consciousness.
Yeah, there's always going to be, 20 years from now, they're probably going to be doing a whole new adaptation of it, because we're going to be watching everything in 7,000p or whatever.
Probably.
Yeah, 1800K. And they're going to have to reanimate it because 1080p is too blurry for us. There's something. But
yeah. It's JoJo. Take it for what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's all we can say about it. Just take it for what it is.
Embrace it.
Embrace it. Embrace the craziness, and it's definitely gay by about the time part 5 rolls around.
Oh yeah. Part 7's super gay.
Oh man.
There's like some real romance between Johnny and Gyro.
There's literal like guys humping each other on one of the manga covers.
Oh yeah, a couple of them.
Yeah.
It's always Johnny with his legs wrapped around Gyro in weird poses and stuff.
All right. Well, thank you all out there for dropping in to listen to the second part of our 2-part JoJo's Spectacular. We hope you enjoyed it, because we always enjoy bringing these kind of things to you. If you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1 of this episode, where we talk about me and Natai talk about the anime. Also, if you want to check out previous episodes of the podcast, you can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. If you want to keep up with what we're doing and have a little more fun, you can join our Facebook group, follow our Twitch channel, or visit our website. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns on this or any episode, feel free to shoot us an email. Links to all of these things will be down below in the description. Thank you for joining me tonight, Riker.
No problem.
And on behalf of him, I've been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, Riker.
Good night, Riker.